Okay, so we have now entered Unit 2, and before we start graphing sine and cosine, we just need to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and we will be reviewing some number line values that we have to calculate. So in the very beginning, we will be obtaining our graphing values, our x values, from the unit circle, but sometimes they're not always going to be exact values from the unit circle, like pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and so on. So we have to make sure we understand how to get all the values that go on here. So you'll always have 5 values on your graph, on your x-axis, and you're going to have a beginning and an end. And basically, we're going to be using the concept of a midpoint. So if I have a beginning and I have an end, if I want the middle, I'm basically going to be adding these two up, the beginning and the end, and dividing by 2. So what you have here in general is an averaging process, which is the beginning plus the end divided by 2. So this is the beginning, and this is the end in this case. So 0 plus 5 pi is 5 pi divided by 2 is going to be 5 pi over 2. And you will always use reduced fractions. So now I have a new beginning and a new end, because now what I want, I'm ignoring this portion of my graph, and what I want is to calculate the midpoint here. So 0 plus 5 pi over 2 is 5 pi over 2. Divided by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. Okay, so this becomes 5 pi over 4. Okay, so that's the midpoint. Now I'm ignoring this side, and I need to find the midpoint here. So what that means is I need to get a common denominator. So you have this 5 pi over 2 here, plus 10 pi over 2, which reduces to 5 pi. This becomes 15 pi over 2, and I'm going to multiply by 1/2, which is the same thing as dividing by 2. And that gives me the midpoint of 15 pi over 4. So now I have all my pieces on my line. So again, you will always have 5 points on your x-axis, a beginning, an end, and a midpoint, and then a midpoint for the front and a midpoint for the back. So let's take a look at these values right here. So we're going to take our beginning and our end, add them together. That gives me 1 pi, cut it in half. I'm left with pi over 2. Here I need to do the same thing, but I have to get a common denominator. So we have negative 6 pi over 2 plus pi over 2 gives me negative 5 pi over 2 times 1/2, negative 5 pi over 4. It's a 5. Okay, now I need to find the midpoint for the back. So in this case, this will be pi over 2 plus 8 pi over 2, which is 9 pi over 2, and I still need to cut that in half, so I end up with 9 pi over 4. Okay, so again, this is just practice for graphing. So sometimes what we have is a compound inequality that we're going to have to solve. So what we want to take a look at are some examples here of how we would deal with this so that we could get our, what we're going to call our bookends. Okay, so what we need to do is make sure that we solve for our x in the middle. Okay, so when we're solving for x in the middle, the first thing we want to do in this example is subtract 6 pi everywhere. So I'm going to subtract 6 pi here. When I subtract 6 pi here, this goes away. And when I subtract 6 pi here, I'm left with negative 4 pi. Now, remember, this coefficient, 3 pi, it's a number, so the whole thing has to go because all I want to do is solve for x. So I'm going to divide by 3 pi, divide by 3 pi, divide by 3 pi. So that leaves me with negative 2 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to negative 4/3. This, on my number line up here, this would be my beginning and this would be my end. Okay, so that's one example. And then here we have another example. So really what I need to think about is this is 1/2 times x. So again, I'm trying to isolate just the x here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is add pi over 4. So this becomes pi over 4 less than or equal to, and I'm going to write this as 1/2 x. When I add it here, it goes away, is less than or equal to. Now I need a common denominator. So in order to move this over here, this becomes 8 pi over 4, and you're adding. So I'm left with 9 pi over 4. So because I have a fraction here, in order to get rid of this 1/2, you'll multiply everything by 2. So when you multiply by 2 here, I'm left with pi over 2 less than or equal to x, less than or equal to 9 pi over 2. And then again, this would become my beginning and my end. So then I would put it on my number line. I would add these two together, multiply by 1/2. Then I have a front beginning and end, do the same thing, a back beginning and end, and then you would have all 5 points for your x-axis.